Picture yourself in the crowded streets of Jerusalem, dust swirling around your sandals as the Passover festival hums with life. Merchants hawk their wares, pilgrims chant prayers, and the air carries the scent of roasted lamb. In the midst of this, a man named Jesus walks through the chaos. He's been healing the blind, feeding thousands with a few loaves, and speaking of a kingdom that feels both near and impossibly far. Yet within days he's arrested, mocked, and nailed to a Roman cross, the most excruciating death reserved for criminals. Why did this happen? Why did Jesus, who claimed to be God's Son, have to die in such a way? The answer unfolds like a story, woven through history, prophecy, and a purpose that stretches beyond the cross itself. The world Jesus entered was shaped by a covenant, a sacred agreement between God and the Jewish people. Through Moses, God gave laws, hundreds of them, meant to guide a holy life. These laws served as a path to maintain a connection with a perfect God. But human nature faltered. No one could keep every law flawlessly. A harsh word, a selfish choice, a moment of pride, these broke the connection, creating a chasm called sin. To mend this, God established a system of sacrifices. A spotless lamb or goat would be offered at the temple, its blood shed to atone for the person's wrongs. This act served as a powerful reminder. Sin demanded a cost, and blood provided the means for restoration. Yet this was temporary. Every year the sacrifices repeated, a cycle of atonement that never fully closed the gap. Jesus grew up in this world, steeped in its traditions, but he spoke of something greater. He called himself the Son of Man, the Messiah foretold by prophets like Isaiah, who described a servant who would be pierced for our transgressions and bear the weight of humanity's failings. Jesus went beyond teaching about God's kingdom. He declared himself its living representation. His words stirred hope but also unease. Why would the Messiah, expected to overthrow oppressors, speak of suffering? At the Last Supper, he took bread and wine, symbols of his body and blood, and told his disciples they represented a new covenant. They didn't understand, exchanging puzzled glances as he spoke of his death as a sacrifice for many. The pieces were falling into place, but the picture was still unclear. That week, Jerusalem's tension boiled over. Jesus entered the city on a donkey, hailed as a king by crowds waving palm branches. He challenged the temple's corruption, driving out money changers with a whip of cords. The religious leaders saw a threat to their authority. The Romans saw a potential uprising. Betrayal came swiftly. Judas, one of his own, handed him over for silver. The trials were a blur of lies and half-truths, with Pilate, the Roman governor, finding no fault yet yielding to the crowd's cries. As Jesus carried his cross to Golgotha, blood streaking his face from a crown of thorns, the question lingered. Why him? Why this brutal end for a man of peace? On the cross, the theological heart of the story emerges. Jesus wasn't dying for his own sins. He had none, a claim even Pilate couldn't refute. Instead, he took on the sins of the world. The Bible describes sin as a debt, a burden too heavy for anyone to bear alone. Jesus' death was the payment, the ultimate sacrifice that fulfilled and surpassed the old system. Unlike the lambs slaughtered yearly, his death was sufficient for all time. When he cried, "It is finished," the words marked completion rather than defeat. The chasm between God and humanity was bridged. The temple curtain separating the holy place from the people tore in two, signaling that access to God was now open to all through Jesus' sacrifice. Theologically, this act addressed both justice and love. God's holiness demanded that sin be accounted for. It couldn't be ignored without undermining divine justice. Yet God's love refused to leave humanity trapped. Jesus, fully God and fully human, was uniquely able to stand in humanity's place, absorbing the consequences of sin while offering a path to reconciliation. His death satisfied the requirement of justice, while extending mercy to anyone who would accept it. Beyond forgiveness, it brought transformation, renewing people and freeing them from ongoing guilt and failure. But the story doesn't end at the cross. 3 days later, the tomb was empty. Jesus' resurrection stood as more than a miracle. It demonstrated his victory over death. It validated his claim to be the Son of God and showed that his sacrifice had power to conquer sin's ultimate consequence, death itself. His followers, once scattered and afraid, became fearless, spreading a message that turned the world upside down. Jesus died to reconcile you to God, and he rose to prove it's true. This leaves us with a question that echoes through time. What does this mean for you? The cross represents more than a past event. It extends an invitation to enter a relationship with God, enabled by a transformative sacrifice.